So Rod, IBM has been a hardware company and a software company for a very long time. Yet here we are at this new event, Solid, with the theme hardware, software, everywhere, the Internet of Things, the new manufacturing. There's clearly a hardware and software revolution going on. What do you see in this at IBM?
Well, you see a lot of different aspects to it. And like you said, we've gone through many iterations of seeing how hardware grows and how you tune the software to it. And especially what used to be an art, how you put these together, now is becoming a common science. And so the differences now are some of the ways that we and others analyze software and think about how hardware is going to change over time. But it's not in one or two places, it's every place. And that's a big change. So I think looking at, for us as we look forward to keeping mainframes around for a long time and other things, what's changing from the application standpoint?
What is changing?
Well, I think that as you see, one is the applications, big time on the mobile side, big time on analytics, as we know about from the data aspects of this. And then the types of time to value is changing dramatically. And I think this is what you're, especially here at Solid is showing too. What used to take years to think about and plan and put together devices and software, now you can do in a few months. That's significant. And so businesses take up on that. If they're going to compete, then they have to shorten that time to value much more than they've done before, which puts tremendous pressure on them to innovate faster, figure out how they can innovate faster.
So does that mean this is an era where hardware startups are going to disrupt long existing companies in the same way that software startups have in the past?
I think there's that capability and that possibility in many cases. I buy lots of devices and some of them turn out to be very useful, but I learn from each one on this, and I don't see many of the traditional manufacturers really starting to pick up on the changes and things like IFTTT and how people think about how they're going to program and what does it mean to do that. Right. What does it mean from an integration standpoint?
Yeah, it just seems like one of the fundamental metaphors for interacting with the world through devices is radically going to change.
So if you look at things like Lockatron was a fun one where they thought they were just a hardware device, didn't have to integrate, and then they had to go further than that. And that was that interaction with their audience about, well, here's what I think I need over time. So now they become not just a hardware platform, they become part of a software platform.
Right. Well, it's also even, you think about the most common hardware platform that we all carry, our smartphones.
Yep.
We're doing this huge exploration of new kinds of applications for those smartphones, and they're not all ones where you sit there and look at the screen.
That's right, yeah.
You trigger a service. And the fact that the service knows exactly where you are, the smartphone, the context from the sensors increasingly driving data-driven services like Google Now or Siri. So let's talk a little bit about data and the Internet of Things. You guys just made a big commitment to Spark, and that obviously is related to huge amounts of increasingly real-time data from the real world that is informing services that you have to make intelligent not in an analysis cycle that lasts days, weeks, or months, but in an analysis cycle that lasts in the outside minutes, but most likely seconds or fractions of a second.
Right.
I love Jeff Jonas's famous line, would you like to cross the street with data that's a second old?
Well, and Spark was an interesting, as we've been working with customers, it's all about them moving to these kind of real-time digital transformations. And they see born on the web companies not have the legacies in many cases that they had. But they also see they've got a lot of other information at their, at their beck and call to leverage, but only if they can do it fast. And so, two things that I think Spark brought to the table. One is the idea of kind of, if you will, an in-memory computing model. I can do it with a very quickly uniform programming model. And so my solution developers can be very productive very fast. We've always started, everybody, you ask the type of problem the customer has, then you pick a technology, Hadoop or something, and then if the customer says, well, I don't need it in 20 seconds, I need it in 200 milliseconds, well, do I start over again? Do I pick now a streaming technology, Storm or Spark? Well, that's kind of the wrong way you want to engage customers. Customers want to tell you their business problem, and Spark really, I think, helps us with that.
Because you can assume that you can deal with problems all the way up from milliseconds up to long-term jobs, and it's the same technology.
It's the same thing, and what people are looking at is historical data, real-time data coming from sensors, coming from other sources, and how they look for events, how do they look for things that are potentially changing their business. Compare that to historical data, right? How can they be very flexible in doing that and very quick at doing that?
Yeah. So this is touching obviously a lot of IBM's customers. Are there particular industries that you think should be really scared and excited? Scared because they're going to miss out if they don't get on the bandwagon, but also excited because there's this huge opportunity for change.
Retail's a big one. We're seeing this, that since you're really trying to build a better relationship, you talked before, with customers, how do I find out or how do I work with the data that I've got, location and other data, to offer you the right, the right information to make some business decisions on, or purchase decisions. I think insurance is one that I'm watching closely, and I have a number of cars and classic cars, and I pay a lot on insurance, but I don't drive them. So, gee, in the future, is Tesla going to be an insurance company? Since they know a lot about your car and your driving, are they going to offer me an all-in-one package? So will Ford do that? Will other people do that? So insurance companies, their side of it, what do you do differently now? You know a lot about history over time with your customers. How would you see your business evolving on this? So I think
we talked about this last year here at Solid, this idea that insurance may be the native business model of the Internet of Things, in the same way that advertising turned out to be the basic, business model for the web. I still think there's a lot to think about there. Let me move on to one other topic, and that is this current fear. It was on the cover of The Atlantic this week about robots eating our jobs, and will there be anything left for humans to do? What do you make of that claim?
I'm not real thrilled about it. I mean, we always look at, my view, we always look at automation. I grew up in Michigan, car lines, and what do you do on these things? And there's, new business opportunities, and it's not the same ones that we've had before for labor and for others to go work on this. Maybe more of this is in software that we had before. Maybe it is in, more user design types of things that you look at that is hard for computers or robots to do at that point. So I think the job market, the labor market, you have to shift. And
I think there's actually kind of a different kind of opportunity, which I don't think we have really thought through for technology to enable new kinds of work. The reason why a company like Uber is able to sort of create jobs is because they realized that they could meet demand for taxi cabs in places that didn't have them before, because of this new sort of online infrastructure, sensor-based infrastructure. Similar thing when we're talking about retail. You can imagine kind of the rebirth of small distributed network of stores that are enabled by data, so that you don't actually have to have the big box store in order to and then you kind of reshaping society. You have a more walkable city with services. There's a lot that we can reinvent. We can think about the way that technology can reinvent healthcare to make it more distributed, more effective. You can think about how we can reinvent energy distribution, again, using sensors and data. I think there's a lot of opportunities there.
I've got friends in the mountains in North Carolina that have solar panels that are selling back, extra electricity to the, and they've been doing this because now that's an economic benefit to them.
Yeah.
If you'd asked them 5 years ago, that's for other places, big metropolitan areas. Well, now, it's not that way. And it's back to your point. I think people adapt a lot faster than we give them credit for. Yeah. And I think that's part of, as we see, robotics and everything come to this, how do you adapt? How do you find the new place to add value? And how do you, get new education, especially online education and other things? I don't think it's that difficult.
Yeah, although there's a lot of evidence that as a society we have accepted the removal of people from companies and from payrolls as a good thing for Wall Street, but we haven't really thought about the overall impact on the economy, because those same workers who are displaced used to be consumers, and they've borrowed, they've tried to make ends meet, and at some point, you know, there's no aggregate demand, the whole economy stops at 70% of our entire economy. So I think we do have to actually focus on, you know, what do we do to get people focused on new kinds of work, and not just sort of say, well, they're a disposable asset and we don't need them anymore.
Well, this comes back to your point on, you know, data and analytics. You know, it's funny how people, when you say analytics, they kind of sit back and go, oh, I'm not a math head, I don't know what you're talking about. Turns out this stuff isn't difficult. I mean, it's not good. And so then when you start, like to talk about small businesses, many small businesses have lots of data that, you know, around them they would like to work with, right? And if we can lower the barriers to that, because supply and demand for anybody that's you know, has any data science skills at all is huge today. And so I think part of, you know, like you said, creating value here is, so, you know, how do we create new tools, new applications that, just like the internet did for e-commerce, you know, look at all the boutiques and businesses that Amazon has today that you didn't have that many years ago.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap. Thanks a lot, Rod.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right.